Hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Lives Transforming Video Training Series. Our series is based on the book Freedom by author Derek Wilder. My name is Brent Henderson. Derek, this week we're going to be talking about a subject which every one of us probably faces on a daily basis. That would be the prison of past and future thinking. Back in 1984, I was on a hunting trip in the Yeliamna mountain range of Alaska. And the bush pilot that I was flying with had dropped us off for 3 days, but 48 hours after he flew away, the weather really started getting nasty. I mean, we had terrible rain, thunder, the temperatures dropped by about 40 degrees. We had gone from about 60 down to about 20. And the pilot couldn't come back and pick us up for over a week because he was flying with something called VFR, which is visual flight restrictions. But the problem was it left two of us stranded about 80 miles away from the closest village in a two-man backpacking tent. And the problem was we were smack dab in the middle of grizzly country. But eventually the pilot flew back to pick us up, and the trip out was almost worse than the experience of being stuck for over a week. As we're flying back towards Anchorage, going through the mountains, we flew into a fog bank about the size of Texas, and we almost crashed the plane right into the side of this mountain. But after we made an emergency landing, our pilot informed us that all the bush pilots up there, they face this kind of a thing on a daily basis, and they all have this saying, be careful, because all the clouds in Alaska have rocks in them. So every time I drive, now to the airport, ever since that experience, as I'm driving and I pass these signs, and we've all seen them if we've flown, and these signs as you're pulling into the airport say, departure or terminal. And it's about that time I start having these unhealthy thoughts of, back in 1984, and I have to begin to renew my mind. Derek, I know how much you love to fly because we've talked about this before, and I think it was about maybe a year ago you had kind of a similar experience.
Well, I was getting ready to fly out to Colorado to work with the ministry out there for a little while, and it was in the wintertime. We were sitting on this flight, and freezing rain started to you could hear the pelts down on the airplane. And so they brought out the de-icing agent, and they had these big trucks come out and start spraying down the airplane.
Makes you feel real good, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm thinking, okay, I hope they get all of the de-icing agent on the whole plane and don't miss any parts or whatever. I don't know how it works actually. Within a few minutes, the pilot gets on and he says, this freezing rain is occurring and we're trying to de-ice the plane. We'll keep you informed. And so I called it. I think I called you. And I said, hey, got freezing rain. And you told me that it was supposed to be freezing rain for another 5 hours or so. And
yeah.
So I'm thinking this is going to be a while. Literally within 30 seconds of getting off the phone with you, the pilot gets back on the radio intercom and says, we're cleared to take off. Now, of course, I'm thinking, hold on there, Hoss.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're ready for takeoff. You just said we got freezing rain going on, and you're not, what are you doing? Well, as you can imagine, they didn't let me go talk to the pilot about this. And we actually took off, and my heart started beating, and I was trying to figure out every way I could to try to get my thoughts off the fact that there's ice coming down and we're flying in freezing rain and hoping that the de-icer worked.
I wonder sometimes how much worry it takes on our part to make sure the flight's going to be okay.
Well, that particular day, I think it took quite a bit.
Yeah. You see everybody stepping onto the plane. They always touch the plane with their hand and bless it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Derek, we've both had these emotions with flying like that. Sometimes I guess they're legitimate fears, and we see things, but those unhealthy emotions like anxiety, fear, worry and doubt, they're usually predicated by this little phrase of what if. For example, what if my spouse leaves me? What if we go bankrupt? What if I never get that vacation I've been hoping for, or that new car, or that house, or that promotion? Derek, why do we get stuck in these what ifs or what might happen?
Well, one of the things when I'm doing seminars or doing a little small group facilitation, what I'll do is I'll do a little experiment. I'll say, here's what I want you to do, is I want you to actually try to make yourself worry. However, in order to make yourself worry, the only rule to the game is you cannot think about the future. Now, try very hard to worry about something. Well, as you can imagine, this is an impossible exercise because you can't worry if you're not thinking about the future. I remember, this has been a long time ago now, but it was somewhere between 10 and 15 years ago. I went for my annual physical, and the doctor informed me that there were some concerns that he had with a blood level result. and that he wanted me to come back and get another blood level. Of course, I wanted to know what he was concerned about, and there was a chance that it could have been cancer.
Sure.
I remember at that time having to spend a few months between blood tests, really challenged by this, what if it is? So I asked a friend to spend a little time with me talking through this. So I went into her office, and the action was pretty obvious what I was experiencing, because it didn't take me very long before I kind of broke down. She realized very quickly that I was experiencing a lot of worry and anxiety around this concern that I had. I had worked with her in the Lives Transforming ministry before. And so she asked me, she says, well, what are you actually thinking? And I said, what I'm thinking is, what's going to happen to Connor?
And Connor is your son.
And Connor is my son, and he was pretty young at that point. And she then, with a few more questions, helped me discover that my belief system underneath everything that was kind of going on was this belief that said, Connor needs me. You wouldn't think that would be a horrible thought to think.
Right. We all think that, yeah.
I mean, I'm the dad, he's the son, he's 5 years old or something like that. For me to think to myself, Connor needs me, doesn't necessarily seem like a horrific thing to think.
Yeah.
However, she pushed back a little bit on that, and she asked me a few more questions. And so my belief was that Connor needs me. My thought was something's going to happen that's not good to him if something would happen to me.
Right.
And my emotion was anxiety, and the action was crying. As we talked through it more, she asked me this question. She said, well, if something happens to you, Derek, what makes you think that Connor isn't going to be able to handle life in a way that's healthy? I said, I don't know. I've just always thought that he would need me. And then she asked me something that was very interesting. She said, is it possible that actually something happening to you would be somehow a benefit to Connor? Now, as you can imagine, this was very counterintuitive. It doesn't seem like that would be a benefit at all. But I looked at her and I said, I guess it depends on how much I want to trust God. And she looked at me and she said, yeah, I think that's right. She goes, what if something happening to you would actually make Connor stronger? He would have to live a life that was more difficult for sure, more difficult than a lot of kids that had a dad. And then she asked me, would he have to lean on his real father more? And at that point, there was this huge sigh of relief that came over me as I realized that, yeah, it would be devastating. It would be very difficult. He would have to rely on God, his father, more maybe than he would ever have to have relied on him if I lived. But the freedom that came from changing this belief from Connor needs me to God can handle it changed everything. So the belief became God can handle it. What might look like something that would be very unhealthy for Connor, if God is in control, it actually might be one of the most healthy things for Connor.
Now, Derek, we all face these worries about tomorrow, those what ifs. What if something like this were to happen? Are there any verses that you can think of that could help us work through this and combat those unhealthy thoughts?
One of my favorite ones is in James chapter 4. And you can just hear James saying this almost with some sarcasm. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow, we will go to such and such city, and we'll spend a year there, we'll engage in business, we'll make some money. In verse 14 it says, but you don't know the first thing about tomorrow. You're just a vapor that appears for a little while and vanishes away. This doesn't seem like a real positive verse. You're a vapor that just vanishes away.
Yeah, where's my worth in that?
Yeah. But one of the things that it did for me is when I was experiencing what I was going through, there was a huge relief in knowing that I'm just a vapor. There's something much bigger than me that could handle things with or without me. The pressure was off. In that moment, that truth allowed my thoughts to move towards, wait, it's not an automatic given that Connor won't be okay. The emotion moves to peace. And of course, my tears go away as I lean into the reality, the truth, that I really am just a vapor. And what freedom there is in that versus me thinking that I'm somehow in control of the whole entire universe and everybody's health that relates to it.
Yeah, it's almost like this unbelievable insurance policy that says, no matter what happens to me, God's going to take care of my son.
Absolutely. That doesn't mean Connor's not going to go through difficulties. That doesn't mean Connor's never going to have struggle with his own health issues or his own financial issues or anything else that he's running through. But the truth is, even those challenges, as James says, are gifts that are going to grow him up.
Yeah.
I don't have to be in control of everything in life. Now, experience the freedom of not having to live feeling like you're in control of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that if I feel like I'm my son's everything, I'm also not going to be relying upon God. I'm going to be trying to do everything myself. It's not really teaching him a whole lot about relying on his Heavenly Father.
Well, as you can imagine, worry is very closely related to pressure. And so we have this pressure that comes from thinking we're more than we are. But how nice it is to live in a place that says, no, we're not more than we are. We're like a vapor.
In what ways do our fears and our faulty predictions about what might or might not happen take our focus off of what God is up to in our lives right now?
Well, if you notice, every time we worry and experience that pressure, the focus is never on God in that moment. It's always on us, on what we can do, what could happen. And so what this actually does is constantly lean us back towards God and trusting Him. In Psalms 31, it says this, "You are my rock and my fortress. For your name's sake, you will lead and guide me. But as for me, I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hand." Now, what freedom there is in that.
You know, when I'm thinking about God's thoughts, instead of seeing fear-based signs saying departure or terminal, I can look at those signs that God wants me to see. Even when I walk into the terminal that says, check baggage here. I can rest in Him in the now because my times truly are in His hands. In our next session, we're going to look at how our thoughts about the future are usually negative, but what about the power of positive thinking? Is that just as destructive? And even more so, is it even biblical? You'll discover the answer in the next session. We'll see you here next time at Lives Transforming.